And we must make sure that you do not appear here again. Bailiff, whack his pee-pee.
What the hell are you two doing? That's called rocking out. You wouldn't understand, Dad. You're not with it. I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what's it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you.
It'll happen to you. This is Dr. Gonzo, and yeah, I'm a baby boomer, 66 years old, and love comics, love movies. Yesterday, I did a really, really fun interview with my Twitter friend, and now my friend, Brett R. Smith. Uh, Brett has colored many comic books, graphic novels. I'm going to leave a link to his website and Twitter page on this video. But we're two ex people from Phoenix, and we talked over 3 hours. So I'm going to split it into pieces that you can digest. It was a great time. It was a great time, and Brett's did a lot of stuff. Here's his bio off of his website. Brett R. Smith is a professional commercial artist working in the graphic novel industry as an editor, production manager, and creative director, a color artist in the comic book industry. And I'll tell you what, folks, he's colored some of my favorite comics. Storyboard artist in the advertising industry and a graphic novel artist for multiple clients. He holds a BFA in animation. Smith started in the commercial art field in 1995 as in-house color artist for Chaos Comics. Since then, he has worked with a multitude of clients, including Marvel and DC, Hasbro, Cartoon Network, McCain Erickson, BBDO, Saatchi and Saatchi. Smith has contributed to multiple premier properties and licenses, including The Avengers, Batman, Superman, G.I. Joe, Wolverine, Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy, Hulk, Justice League, Heineken, Chase Bank, Miller Beer, Cheerios, Pillsbury, Birdseye, many others. Smith was co-adapter, editor, and creative director for the New York Times #1 bestseller, Clinton Cash, a graphic novel, and the Amazon #1 bestseller, Trump, the First 100 Years. Well, the interview went really long, so enjoy this. Again, we're going to break it into bite-sized pieces because it did go long. Great interview with Brett R. Smith.
Marty! You've got to come back with me! Where? Back to the future!
So going forward, though, so we have what's behind us.
Sure.
It doesn't seem like they're learning their lesson.
Some are.
Because this seems to be the future. I'm going to put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
This seems to be the future
of comics, and also of the MCU. I guess we're going in the direction of Young Avengers, which I think is going to be,
which is a way they could bring Wanda back. Maybe
I think it's going to be a failure. I don't see it working. I think I'm just not quite sure if Disney has had enough failure to the point where they bottom out. Disney's like a drug addict, and they're like an alcohol abuser or a drug abuser. The box office continues to be the intervention. There's a problem here, Disney, and we're going to have an intervention on opening day, and we're not going to go see your movie, and it's going to crash and burn. And they're ignoring
the Marvels did. Wouldn't you think they want to change course because of that?
Yes, I would think so. I think there's a lot of shareholders that do. This Nelson Peltz gentleman, who's one of the shareholders, is making is trying to gain. Ike Perlmutter's given his shares to this guy, and they're trying to gain some leverage on Bob Iger. Unfortunately, I think you've got a lot of activists, investors, still shareholders in Disney, and they are kind of pulling the strings, man. So I'm not exactly sure if I'm not sure if Kevin Feige and all these people believe in all this DEI stuff, or if it's something that they're mandated to do because of BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard and all these people who run their pensions and whatnot. I just don't know. All I know is that Netflix is saying to themselves, we want different results. So we're going to go in this different direction. We're going to course correct with One Piece and Cobra Kai. Look at Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai is probably one of the most, probably maybe aside from South Park, one of the only TV shows out there that mocks the left and mocks the woke and feminist propaganda. Cobra Kai is brilliant. And unfortunately, we're coming up on the last season. So they're going to end with
they had the kid from Cobra Kai and Blue Beetle.
He's great.
I thought he did a great job.
Zolo, I think his name is. He's really really talented.
He's
kid,
a great actor.
He is. He's really good. And I think that I think the creatives did their best with kind of what they were handed with that whole thing. I don't blame that on him. This is a Bob Iger. This is a Kathleen Kennedy. This is a Kevin Feige problem. And
I think they need to ditch Feige. And I heard a rumor he was going over to Star Wars. It's like,
that's what I heard as well.
I
don't know, man. I mean, but I mean, it seems kind of like in Hollywood, you fail up a lot of the times. We see certain people that win and excel, like Taylor Sheridan and others. But there's a lot of middle management that seems to get promoted to upper management, but a lot of these companies have these like Bud Light. It's very similar, where you've got a bunch of young kids who have PhDs in marketing and went through all this political indoctrination in college. Some of them got probably doctorates in it, like I said, and now they've gotten jobs at Bud Light. They've gotten jobs at Marvel and Disney and other places, and they're in the marketing departments, and they're dictating terms to creatives as to what you can do, what you can say, who you can feature. So it's a problem. And Bud Light was a great example of how simple it is for somebody to come in with an agenda and just completely ruin things. So I think that a lot of companies are looking and saying, I don't know if it's really worth it to go down this road just so we can all feel virtuous and say that we're really good people because we hired X, Y, and Z. And it's much better to make money. Retain,
what about good old capitalism?
Well, again, you want to retain what you have, retain your existing customers, and grow the pie. Reach new people. Bud Light is also a company that's doing a very radical course correction. Now they are the official beer of the UFC. They've partnered with the UFC because they want to be known, their brand, with the UFC. And that's quite a course correction from Dylan Mulvaney to the UFC. The other thing is the person who was in charge of US marketing at Bud Light is gone as of last week.
Oh, that lady?
Well, I don't know if it's that lady. I think she was gone too, but I think her boss, and I think a lot of those people that were in charge of US marketing, the execs, they're gone. And they waited, obviously Bud Light waited about a year to let them go. This is kind of the time when you would let somebody like that go, is right before the holidays, because they're not coming back obviously next year. But Bud's trying to course correct. I never expected them to come out and say, "Oh, we're sorry and we apologize and we're a bunch of dickheads. We screwed up." I never figured that. I just figured they would fire people and they would start on a course correction from the standpoint of marketing. Right. That way, they never really have to come out and admit failure. But essentially, they are. By teaming up with Dana White, they're essentially telling everybody, we screwed up and this is how we're going to help correct it. Because making Harley ads or Harley beer cans and, making Clydesdale ads and ads with veterans, that's not good enough. They need to really tap into something that is American, an American brand, and middle America. They want to try and recapture that look and that brand. And I think that partnering with the UFC, making peace with Kid Rock. Kid Rock recently came out and said, I don't like what they did, but I don't want to be a part of some, boycott and cancel culture. And I'm a Christian. So obviously I'm going to extend to them forgiveness. And ultimately, they know they screwed up. They know they did. And by firing this exec, which was, I think, reported in Breitbart, I think it's a really good sign. So we're seeing signs, right? We're seeing Amazon make the course correction with Terminal List, with Reacher, Netflix making a course correction with One Piece. I know they've got some other manga adaptations in the live action, which I guarantee
Scott
you.
Pilgrim's back with all the original cast.
You know what? I heard that's completely woke. I heard it's completely garbage.
Is it? I had no idea. I was, that's the one movie where Brie Larson really could sing. I didn't like her singing in the Marvels, but I would have mixed that in the studio.
Enjoyed. I was not a fan of the comic. I didn't read it, so I wasn't that I didn't like it or I liked it, but I wasn't familiar with the comic. I watched the movie, and I really liked it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought Chris Evans cracks me up in that thing all the time, talking about getting blazed in his Winnie. It's so funny.
Yeah,
and I like the music in it
with Black Sheep and the whole thing. You know,
but
she rocked it, man.
But I had read that the movie was close to the source material, and that's why the fans really liked it. So then they're going to do an anime of it, and I know a couple guys who are really into the comic book, and the animation looks great. It looks really faithful to the source material comic, and then it turns out that it's a complete bait and switch. It's kind of like Masters of the Universe Revelation, where you think it's about He-Man, but they kill He-Man off in the first episode, and then it becomes about Teela. This becomes, they kill Scott Pilgrim off in the first episode, and then it becomes what's his name, or what's her name, who goes and battles her. Ramona goes and battles her ex's girlfriends. So total Charlie Brown in the football, total bait and switch. And that's the type of stuff where, you know, and I'm just thinking to myself, when was this in production? Was this in production before One Piece? Have they really learned their lesson? I don't know. But I mean, I've got to take Netflix at face value. They did something right with One Piece. Hopefully they'll continue on with other properties that they're going to do. But
and Brett, the same with Sony.
Yes.
Let's bring up Madam Web just very quickly.
What do you want from me? Why do you care for me? Why do you know?
Hey, come on, get your stuff. Let's go. Let's try that again.
A week ago, I spent my life racing against time.
I'm gonna help you out today, okay?
Trying to save people who were running out of it.
Jesse!
Until one moment changed everything.
Come on!
Welcome back to the land of the living.
I don't understand what's happening.
I've been having visions.
I knew he was gonna die.
I think I'm seeing the future.
New York City's a whole new level of crazy these days.
What do you want from me? What do you know?
New York City's a whole new level of crazy these days.
This is an emergency. Get off the train.
That man's trying to kill you.
What?
Who are you? What is going on?
I can see the future.
Oh, what the hell? She didn't see that coming? That's not how it works.
I've seen that man before.
So who is he?
Ezekiel Sims. He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Wait, I recognize you. You live in my building.
You're the paramedic. Yeah, you almost ran me over.
You don't think this is weird? How we're all connected?
It's honestly like the least weird thing that's happened all day.
What do you want from me?
I have no idea what those girls are coming.
Why don't you want from me?
I think he can see into the future.
What are you want from me?
He's trying to change what happens. Julia, get down!
Why aren't you scared of me? Why do you care for me?
Your future was almost so different.
Where do we go?
If you want to live, you have to trust me.
Get ready. Now! showing off. Maybe a little.
I mean, okay, so
how could you watch that trailer and like yeah,
dude, you want to talk? If my kid doesn't know who Ezekiel Sims is,
right,
and he's a rabid Spider-Man fan,
mm-hmm.
but hey, Brett, we won on this one because he was race swapped with a Mideastern man,
right.
you know, instead of an old rich white dude, which could have been. I found a picture. You're gonna like this. So they could have went with this actor instead, which would have made more sense. But
Ron Perlman, sure.
Yeah.
I
mean, but they chose to go to race swap, but we got one for that. But the whole Madam Web thing, Madam Web was old, you know. They do have what's that Mexican Spider-Man?
Miles Morales.
Well, yeah, no, Miles half black, half Mexican. Ariana.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. I thought the Spider-Woman suit looked kind of cool in the trailer. Dakota Fanning is easy on the eyes. I never saw the Gray shows, but I mean, she's a beautiful woman. But they have Mary Parker in there too.
Yeah.
That's Spider-Man's mom. How are they going to work that out with Tom Holland? Is it?
I don't know. Dakota Fanning's dialogue, it's almost like she forgot how to act, but it's
it was
such
lame.
horrible dialogue. I don't know what you do with it. It's just, the whole trailer just looks lame, and it's written by the guys that did Morbius. So I think you can expect just, as much out of this one.
Morbius was a huge disappointment, man.
I don't know what, Jared Leto was obviously looking for a paycheck. That's all I can say about that. He's a really talented guy. And I just think to myself, okay, would you rather like sit around and write music for 30 Seconds to Mars or do this? And obviously maybe the Morbius paycheck was to allow him to write more music for 30 Seconds from Mars. I don't know, but I'd rather have more 30 Seconds from Mars music.
They're actually a pretty good band, dude.
They are. No, seriously. I mean, I honestly think that in a lot of ways, his acting is a way for him to keep, be a musician in an era, which, it's almost impossible to be a musician, whether a studio musician, which are kind of a thing of the past, or a professional one, because there's just no more profit incentive in joining a band and looking for a record contract, especially if you're a rock band.
Dude. So. Oh, yeah, I know. And I knew Kate Bishop was going to be a post-credit scene ahead of when others did. And I won't reveal my source, but
yeah,
I know some of the First Call guys in the music part of it.
Yeah,
and they're hurting. They're getting, just like in the Marvels, they got that budget composer lady, Laura Cartman, who just, her stuff in What If is okay because I like the big drums.
Sure,
but the that whole Princess Yan and Captain Marvel dance and thing was like, are they going Disney princess?
What is she doing? She's respecting the flow.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a Disney princess song.
It was
so,
that's what Chris said, Gord the other day was turning Marvel and Star Wars, these brands, which have always been male centric. They've always been boy brands, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Boys need their brands too. I know a lot of people hate the idea of that it should just be asexual, that brands just appeal to boys and girls. Well, that's not the way it works. You know, I mean, there was a study done where they gave a bunch of boys a bunch of Barbies, and they gave a bunch of girls a bunch of GI Joes, and the boys were, you know, basically launching the Barbies into space, and fighting with them and turning them into weapons, and the girls were basically nesting with the GI Joes and homemaking inside the GI Joe fort. It's like nature is nature, and you can't fight it. And men and women are different things appeal to different sexes. And I'll never forget Tony Scott in the audio commentary of Top Gun talking about the volleyball sequence. The Kenny Loggins partying with the boys soundtrack, and you've got these this volleyball, at the beach, and you got the ocean in the background. You got these beautiful '50s cars, all polished and looking beautiful behind the guys, and you've got Rick Roscoff, Val Kilmer, Maverick and Goose, all oiled up, looking virile and handsome and muscular. And Tony Scott just said, I had to do this scene because it's the only way. I had to have some skin. I had to have these hunky, muscular guys take their shirts off, right? And also, by having these hunky, muscular guys in the movie, I'm able to get the women in, because the guys are going to show up because it's fighter planes and it's gear, and it's like Paul Chato talks about, the gear porn. Boys and men love cars and gadgets and guns and all kinds of cool mechanical stuff, right? So you're going to get the guys in the theater because it's Top Gun, right? But you got to get the chicks in there, man. And that's why it's just like, Branagh, who did the first Thor, he took the opportunity to have Chris have that great sequence where he takes his shirt off and all the girls sit there and ooh and ah. But it's like, that's how you get the girls in the audience, because they, despite what Marvel and DC and Disney think, the girls want hunky, handsome, masculine, tough guys on screen. They don't want Timothée Chalamet. They want Chris Hemsworth. They want
Jason Momoa.
Absolutely.
I mean, I bet you I'm going to go see Aquaman because movies, man.
He does.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Is it going to be a massive hit? It'll do better than the Marvels does, but
I think it will.
And they wreck Star Wars and everything else. But they want you. They still want women. Still want good-looking guys. I think
they do. Well, and they want tough guys. They want masculine guys. This whole thing about toxic masculinity, it's a complete misnomer. It's total propaganda. That's what maybe 20% of women don't want. That 23% of Americans who are polled who identify as very liberal. It's usually about 15-20%, which account for the fringe on both sides, right? So those hardcore feminists, those hardcore liberals, those intersectionalists, the SJWs, the woke crowd, they say that they don't want the tough guy because that's all toxic masculinity. But the majority of women out there, they don't see it that way. That is not the prevailing philosophy. It's just not. I don't believe that. I've never believed that. And the media, they try and brainwash everybody into thinking that that's what the majority wants, but it's not.
Geeks, Boney Bab, Cliff. No. It's a lie.
Yeah, and Barbie, I walked out of the movie because I was just put off. It shouldn't have been a movie for kids, but do you think they were looking at Ryan Gosling's 8-pack? I bet they were.
I'm sure they were. I mean, Ryan gets these gigs because Ryan is he's talented, I mean, he can act.
Good actor, man.
He's really good. I love The Nice Guys. I wish we'd get a sequel to The Nice Guys because I loved him and Russell. They had such great chemistry, and I love Shane Black. I think he's one of the best writers of the last 40 years. And I think Ryan was good in Blade Runner. I think Ryan's really, really talented. I love Drive. But Ryan's also handsome.
The gangsters.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
And
what was that? I don't remember what that was called, but that was good. So
and Sean Penn played the bad guy.
Right. Movie. Yeah, I need to watch that. I watched one the other day, Lawless, with Tom Hardy and Shia LaBeouf, and it's
that's a great movie, dude.
That was really good, man. I missed that in the theater, and I just thought to myself, Chuck Dixon recommended it to me, and I just thought, wow, this is cool. This is the kind of fun you know, they're about bootleggers from like the 20s or the 30s. I think it was the 30s, as I recall, and it's based on a true story. But yeah, I mean, these days, you know, it's funny. We did an episode of Pop Culture Warriors about this, but these days you have to, in order to you know, kind of free yourself of the woke social justice warrior artistic chains and restraints, you go to the past. You do a period piece. You know, you go back to a certain point in time in history when none of that stuff existed, right? So if you want to stay true to the period piece, you know, none of that stuff can be incorporated into the story, right? And then if you're doing historical dramatization, like with Winning Time, you still keep all that stuff out because it didn't exist. It wasn't a part of the culture. And frankly, to shoehorn anything like that in would be a disservice to the movie and a suspension of disbelief, and just, you know, just pulls you right out of the movie, like it does me, even with modern things, right? But it's interesting that like a way to get around the woke mind virus creatively is to do period pieces and go to the past to tell stories, which I think is interesting.
And I am not against having strong female leads.
We grew up with them
in the movies. Here's a show.
Badass chick.
Yeah, but we grew up with Ripley. We grew up with Linda Carter's. You know, we grew up with, you know, Carrie Fisher. We grew up with so many tough female leads that, you know, didn't diminish the male character in any way. In fact, they supported them. You know, I even think about Red, the first Red with Bruce Willis. You know, you've got some strong female leads in that, and they don't.
Helen Mirren. Mirren was great in there.
Right.
Even the one who Bruce.
Yeah, Mary
Beth.
What the hell's her name?
Beth Parkinson.
Mary Parker, something like that. I forget. Mary Louise. Yeah. Mary Louise Parker. She's great.
Mary Louise Parker.
Yeah,
right.
she's great.
She's fun in that.
She is. She's great. I was telling Lisa about kind of a sleeper was Night and Day with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz. That's a lot of fun.
Got skills.
Let's go.
Oh yeah,
really well done. It's James Mangold. He's a great director. It just didn't quite hit with audiences, and I think people were still kind of turned off by Tom and his Matt Lauer interview at that point, which has turned out to be kind of prophetic because he was 100% right about the psychotropics and the SSRIs and the Ritalin and everything. People going back and they watch that interview where he's lecturing Matt Lauer, who's now turned out to be a really awful guy who locks women in his office with a button on his desk, you know. But it's like Tom lecturing him back then about how, you know, how bad it was for putting kids on drugs. Well, Tom turned out to be 100% right. He's been completely vindicated in a lot of ways. It's really good. Not exactly sure why that wasn't a bigger hit, but you know, Tom is, you know, he's an outlier, man. He's one of these throwbacks. He knows what the audience wants. He gives them, I think, really satisfying movies and stories. Not all of them are huge hits, but they're all really solid, you know. And it's kind of like talking about a bad Sam Peckinpah movie. It's just sort of like, well, it's better than most. Yeah. So I you know, I'm a big Tom fan. I love this last Mission Impossible a lot. Not quite as much as Fallout or a Dead Reckoning, but I really liked it, and I just think that I like supporting guys like that. Like Thanksgiving, we're not doing anything with family or anything because family's out of town. So we're going to go and spend our Thanksgiving with Ridley Scott. We're going to go watch Napoleon. So,
cool.
You know, some of these guys,
it's a hard job. Somebody's got to do it.
I mean, some of these guys, I don't really care what they do. Like Ridley, I'll pretty much follow Ridley just about anywhere because he's one of the great master storytellers and great visual storytellers. And I just think Tom's kind of the same way at this point. I just think that Last Action Hero, Last Man Standing, out of all those 80s guys, maybe with the exception of Sly, who's kind of sort of retired, but not really, because I think we're going to get more Tulsa King. That's another course correction, by the way. You know, Paramount's made a couple course corrections. Yeah. You've got Yellowstone, you got Bass Reeves, you got 1923, you've got 1883, and then you've got Tulsa King. And Tulsa King is another show that makes fun of. It makes fun of and it pokes fun at woke and propaganda and all that stuff. And it's very much the antithesis of that. And I think that is going to be a theme that you see more and more in entertainment. In fact, I just saw a trailer for a movie with Pierce Brosnan, which is coming out, where he plays a hitman, and it's called Fast Charlie.
I'm not an enforcer. I'm more like a
fixer.
Exactly. I have to convince a certain person that the body in that trunk out there is indeed Rolo.
Something happened to his face?
What the? It's missing, along with the rest of his head. Betrayal's a funny thing. Its very nature is to catch you unaware. You ever heard a Ring doorbell? We're under attack.
Stan's gone. And you should be too.
I've always had one rule, Sal. Be good to the people who were good to you.
Be good to yourself, Charlie. And get as far away from here as you can.
You turned on your own.
You ought to get out of Biloxi, Charlie.
That's what everyone keeps telling me.
That 50 grand could really change things for me. I'm going with or without you.
Ask Charlie. I got more men than you got bullets.
Bullets are easy to get.
What do you want?
You. Not breathing.
And how you gonna do that?
I'm doing it.
We can run on for a long time.
You know, you really ought to start thinking about an exit plan. What are you waiting for? Pull the trigger, Charlie. You're in over your head.
I don't like loose ends.
He was my second best guy.
I'm looking forward to meeting number one.
And it looks to me like a Western, even though it's not a Western. He's a hitman, but basically it's kind of taken sort of Liam Neeson sort of, you know, he's obviously a badass with a certain particular set of skills who can go out and exact revenge on the bad guys. I think that you're going to see more of these old gunslingers, these older actors who were known as big action stars make a comeback because we're lacking that in a big way within the culture. And as much as I like Tom Holland, and I think Tim Chalamet is very talented, they just don't get the job done. They're just not masculine and tough. And I think that even these guys like Pierce, who are older, right? I just think they have a certain gravitas that they bring with them, and they have on screen that a lot of these younger guys they just don't have. They just don't have. Maybe they just have lower T than some of these older guys. I don't know. It should be the
And
opposite.
I saw a Pierce Brosnan movie. I think it was on Netflix, where he plays this Irish terrorist from the IRA, and he nails it.
I'll have to
and
check that
and
out.
they I forget the name of it, but
I love
yeah, he
Pierce.
plays the ex-IRA guy.
I think Pierce is
And,
great. So
yeah,
I used to watch.
I mean,
Used to watch Remington Steele with my mom back in the 80s.
oh, dude, that was great. That was a great
She had
show.
such a crush on him.
And look at what they did to Star Wars. Let me play a short clip.
I heard Yoda talking about midi-chlorians. I've been wondering, what are midi-chlorians?
It's heroin.
That's funny.
I mean, it's like you might as well put that in. That was more interesting than Ray. It's like it's like the movies these days and the comic books. Nobody has to earn their thing. That's why I'm going to give Kate Bishop a little bit of a pass, because she admired Hawkeye because he was the one guy that was not a superhero. He couldn't fly, and they expressed that in the series. You know, so she earned her way. I mean, she studied swords and all that stuff.
Sure.
But on the bad side, and Jeremy Renner was beat up, and you can see that because he's not a superhero. But they ruined Swordsman, and they stuck Kingpin in a freaking Hawaiian shirt. Who does that? That should be illegal, man.
I don't know.
I mean, that
a
was
tough
so
one.
gay. I mean, it was so weird. You know?
Yeah. No, I know what you mean when you say gay, because that's how we used to say weird or lame back in the day. That's gay. That's an 80s term, the 90s term. But I think it's funny because Lucas defining the Force and the midi-chlorians and all that stuff, it reminds me of Wolverine. Again, I don't need to know every single particular point about the man's backstory. Leave some things up to the imagination. Leave things mysterious, okay? There's something about the Force that became less mysterious when Lucas went into all that garbage, and it just wasn't necessary. However, I will say this. When George wrote those things, George was an older guy. George wasn't the George he was when he did Star Wars or even Empire Strikes Back, because back then he's a fresh USC graduate who had one hit on his hands with American Graffiti, and he had something to prove. And he wasn't rich and successful. And all these guys, Spielberg, Milius, all these guys change over time. And it's kind of
sad.
You can't expect them to say the same.
No.
So everybody grows. Everybody becomes. George and those guys originally were the scrappy young auteur startups, right? They had to prove themselves, and then they became very much a part of the system. They became very much the system through their success. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I just think
people
George
will go into their movies.
Well, yeah, man, and I just think that George has he's in a completely different mindset than he was when he sat down to write those original three or even plot the original three. Milius has said many times that George gets all this credit for being good with mythology when he's really not. He really doesn't understand mythology. He just thinks he does. And Milius has always thought that the genius really behind George was Marcia, his ex-wife, who's the one that edited Empire and edited Star Wars behind the scenes and edited Jedi. And when he got divorced from Marcia, a lot of his creative choices and projects changed. But either way, I will say this: as flawed as those first three Star Wars prequels from George Lucas are, they're very good in comparison to the garbage that we get from Kathleen Kennedy, who, I will remind everyone, started out as John Milius's secretary. Okay?
Right.
Kathy Kennedy was John Milius's secretary. And I think a lot of this stuff with Kathy and the Force is female and all of this
So long, gay boys!
Let the hate flow.
Female characters, and I think a lot of it's comeuppance. I think she resents all of the years that she worked for the boys, whether it's Spielberg, Lucas, Milius, Brian De Palma, Paul Schrader, any of those guys that came up, the 70s USC Mafia, as they're called, all of those auteur directors that the studios turned to in the late 70s, early 80s and said, we have these failing studios and we need creatives to turn it around. And we're going to take some real risks on guys like you and Ridley Scott and Adrian Lyne and Paul Verhoeven and the rest. And those were all good risks. Those risks all paid off.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great director.
But I think Kathy being involved, I think it's kind of like, oh, well, we did all this for the boys all those years, and now it's going to be all for the girls. That's the way I see it. And that's sort of the gist that I get from Kathy and the creative direction and all this stuff. This is some kind of weird comeuppance, or the boys had the boys had their time in the 80s and the 90s, and now I'm in charge, so the girls are going to come first. And in that, they betray these brands which were created for boys and were male centric, and it's no different than the comics. All these comics that you and I grew up with, largely a male audience. I would say probably 90%.
Oh,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And at some point in time, it's like it's kind of like He-Man. He-Man was this huge, incredible billion-dollar brand, and then when they introduced She-Ra into the universe, the boys suddenly weren't so interested in He-Man anymore because it wasn't special. He-Man was for them; it was their thing. Hasbro had a certain a percentage of sales on girls, but it was insignificant. However, the Barbie creatives were very threatened by the He-Man brand because He-Man had overtaken Barbie at Hasbro as being the #1 bestseller. So the chicks at Hasbro wanted in on some of that He-Man sales, so they convinced powers that be at Hasbro to create She-Ra and open up the Masters of the Universe line to girls. And that's ultimately what destroyed the He-Man line in the late 80s. That, and also guys like me who grew up with that stuff, were starting to become teenagers and we were starting to grow out of it. So there is that aspect of it as well. But you will, there's a great documentary about Masters of the Universe that Adam Goldberg, who did the Goldbergs TV show, produced. My buddy Val Staples is in it. And they talk about this, and they talk to actual Hasbro people who all state exactly what I'm saying, is that the She-Ra line is what kind of, in a lot of ways, killed the He-Man of the 80s, because it became something that your sister was into as well. And that's not cool. The girls should have their Barbies, the boys should have their G.I. Joes.
Let guys be guys and girls be girls.
Yeah.
And the whole thing. So I think the course turnaround is going to take them getting a little bit more broke, because you have, let me just use one quick example by a clip. You have the perfect Reed Richards.
They've been courting that guy for years, and just to do that, it just blows
I
me
know.
away.
I know. Krasinski would have been great in the role, and now Pedro Pascal, get a Martell.
Well, apparently Jake Gyllenhaal is who they wanted, and Jake was too expensive. So, and then there's this rumor that Kevin Feige said, Reed Richards, that's too white. And so they went to Pedro Pascal, who I think is a great actor. I discovered Pedro in those first couple seasons of Narcos, which is great TV.
I like Pedro Pascal in certain things.
I just don't need to see him everywhere. I don't need to see him as Reed Richards. There are other actors. I'm a buddy of mine ghost wrote the first 2 Fantastic Four movies for Tim Story, and we all thought that the casting on those first 2 was impeccable. Lone Gufford. Chris Evans made a fantastic.
Chris Evans was a great Human Torch.
Michael Chiklis was the perfect thing, and I thought Jessica Alba was fantastic, and she's beautiful, and she was the perfect suit one. So I just kind of look at this and I just say to myself, here we are. It's the old MCU stuck to source material, and you look at those first two Fantastic Four movies, and they're very good from the standpoint of sticking to the source material.
And even from a view of the Jonathan Hickman, which is a little bit more liberal than
Mark Millar and Brian Hitch, once they were done with Ultimates, they did a very short run on FF. Mark had to leave because I think he was having problems with his health. So it was kind of short-lived, but I really liked what they did on that book. I thought it was a lot of fun, tapped into kind of the old Kirby, Stanley sort of vibe. And
I love the artwork on it.
Oh, Brian Hitch, man. I mean, whatever that guy does, I'm there. He's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. That Ultimates, I have the Ultimates in trade, but that first two Ultimate runs of Millar and Hitch, that is some of the best comics of the last 20 years. I can pick up and read
comparable to some of the old George Perez stuff. Me and you talked about that online.
Absolutely.
Crisis of Infinite Earths.
Yeah.
How the comic actually speaks the action.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the George Perez thing? Not to interrupt you, but I still remember Supergirl dying and her hand falling down. That one panel showed so much, and then Superman screaming.
Yeah.
George
is one of those guys like Hitch who is master at doing the layouts and doing the visual storytelling and hitting those really emotional beats visually, which sometimes is there depending on the writer, and sometimes it's up to the artist to kind of interpret that stuff and take those chances on their own. But yeah, George is a great guy. I worked with him on Superman. He wrote my Superman run on the New 52, which people didn't really like, but they loved the art. They didn't like the story too much, but it was still a lot of fun. And then I've colored some of his stuff, I think, on Legion of Superheroes on a couple of occasions. So I've had some good times with George. And it's tough anytime. I remember when he lost sight in one of his eyes, and then he came back, and then he got sick, and it sucks, but the guys older. You get old, and that's just kind of what happens. The guy went out on his terms, which I really respected. He went out at home with his wife, and he's just got this amazing legacy, and these guys, these artists who leave such, incredible stuff, incredible entertainment, music, art, movies, these guys that leave this stuff behind, they kind of live forever in a lot of ways because their art lives forever, and we can go and enjoy it anytime we want.
So do you see the future to be more independent? Because we're going to have, wrapping all this up, and I really appreciate all your time, Brett. I really do. Dude, man, I want to talk together. Maybe me, you, and Lisa can hang out on something, man. That'd be fun. But I think the future, because there's going to be a lull because of the strike,
Yeah, we've only got Deadpool for next year. That's it. That's the only Marvel movie we're going to get.
And that's okay.
It is okay.
Do you think this, let me show you a slide. I think me and you talked about this online.
Yeah, I think
I appreciate your hang time.
I think the key to the Marvel universe going forward is going to be absence makes the heart grow stronger. And I think a little bit of absence of Marvel from the market will be a very good thing. They need a break. Yes, Taylor Swift is Dazzler. Perfect.
I can see that.
Do it.
And I could,
but moreover, make an X-Men movie. They need to bring the X-Men back. That's the only thing that is going to pull the MCU out of the doldrums that it's in. I think that the Deadpool movie will be refreshing, and I think it's going to be a palate cleanser. And I think Ryan's the perfect guy to do that. And I think a Deadpool movie is perfect. Having Hugh back is great. They'll have chemistry. Everybody will get to see Wolverine in the goofy yellow and blue costume. I like the brown and yellow, or the brown and orange. But that'll be great for the fans. And I think it'll make a lot of money. I think Deadpool 3 is going to be, I think it's going to print money. I think it's going to be really good. For one, it's the only movie we're going to get next year from Marvel, but also it's being done by some guys who really, really love the character and the source material, and they almost take it upon themselves, kind of like Zack Snyder with Watchmen or 300. It's almost like an homage making this live action is like almost a tribute to the comic, So I
Hey,
think
that new Zack Snyder thing looks kind of good on Netflix. Yeah,
visually it looks amazing. I'm just so
yeah,
sick and
yeah.
tired of the 90-pound female protagonist.
Yeah,
give me
no,
some
I get it.
guys. Give me some guys to hang out with, man.
That's why I hope.
Time is a fascinating thing. We often like to think of it as something that just is. But too many people let the past determine who they are. When true greatness is determined by how one deals with the present. So if I'm helping you, I have one condition.
Yeah. No more quitting.
Time is a gift, Isom. What are you gonna do with yours?
Awesome.
Dude, man, you have access to Eric July. I do not. I'm just a little guy. I would encourage him. That animation I got excited when I saw that, man.
Well, the same with Alpha Core.
The animation is great. I heard there's animation studios there now.
They hired some guys after that Isom preview, and then they did the Alpha Core preview, and I think they're going to do more based on the success of the campaign. But I think that doing the animation to hype the campaign and get people excited about the comic was perfect. A lot of the times, back in the 80s, you start with the toy, right? You start out with the toy, and then they moved, like whether it's Masters of the Universe or whether it's Transformers, and then they go hire Marvel Comics to tell the story, and then it gets adapted into animation. They've kind of reversed it where you've got the comic, you do some animation, and then they're talking about potential toys or action figures, I think way down the line. But doing more animation is something they're more interested in. And I think that's smart because video is huge.
I would pay money.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, right now, with the amount of foot traffic on YouTube, it's a perfect marriage to have the comic book and some animation that runs alongside of it, whether it's shorts, which turn into one long format movie, or maybe it's episodic, weekly episodic type stuff. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah, but I like the style. I like the look. It's not Disney. It's not anime. It's kind of sort of a hybrid somewhere in between. But I think that, and also from the standpoint of marketing, those are things that people can like and retweet and share very easily. And then that builds hype, and that builds enthusiasm and excitement. And it also builds something really important within the indie community, which is authenticity. So often the indie comics that we grew up with were often in black and white, or they didn't quite have the caliber of artists that Marvel and DC had. Now that's kind of not the case. You have a lot of Marvel and DC guys doing their own indie comics. So a lot of these indie comics, unlike any time prior, probably since Image, look and feel. But they all look and feel authentic, right? So I always stress that if you want to create something, it's got to be equal to or greater than what your competition is, right? It can't look cheap. It can't look B-movie. It can't look anything other than on the same level or better than who you're competing with. And when I did Clinton Cash, and Peter Schweizer and Steve Bannon said, we want you to do this. We're going to pay you to do this. I said, I am not doing this unless you give me a budget where I can go out and hire the best, because we're going to create something that is equal to or greater than what Marvel and DC puts out, so it looks and feels authentic. On top of that, taking any kind of creative risk is a risk, right? So how do you mitigate that risk? Hire the best. Hire fantastic artists. Eric July is doing that. You know, it paid off with Clinton Cash, right? And it's paid off with all the books that I've packaged, because I always stress hiring great people, right? And I've worked with Derla Santa Cruz, Chuck Dixon, two guys that are Marvel and DC guys, worked on all kinds of Batman, Punisher, you name it. So from that standpoint, Eric's doing the same thing, man. He's going out there and hiring great people, and the stuff that he's putting out looks authentic, feels authentic. It's got a bunch of ex-Marvel and DC guys attached to it. So you've got some name recognition, and people see that authenticity and they want to be a part of it, you know? And plus it's new, man. And I just think I can't really stress that enough. I think that, you know, I love Superman, I love Batman, I love these 80-year-old properties. Okay. And yes, they are 80 years old, but right now those properties account for like 9% of total comic sales in America. You know, 76% is manga. You know, the Japanese are just eating our lunch, and the rest to fill in, you know, the gaps is indie comics. So that's the future. I think the future is indie. I think the future is ownership. I think a lot of these creators understand that it's great to work on Superman and Batman, but at the end of the day, you don't own it. You're going to get a pittance from the standpoint of a page rate. Marvel and DC are paying really low page rates, which is why they can't afford great artists and great writers. They don't have the sales numbers to give royalties. You know, the highest sales on some of these books for Marvel are 50,000. You know, when I worked on Superman, we had 120,000 print run. That's on the first print run. And then another 100,000 on the second print run. You know, so their top tier books, their flagship books are only pulling in 50,000 sales. That's pathetic. And it's so sad and so unnecessary. But the inmates are running the asylum at editorial. And that's why you have sales. You know, and plus you've got a bunch of people who are not really committed over the long term to stay in comics. A lot of these people get jobs at Marvel and DC in order to try and leapfrog into the movies. And then they finally realize that there's no correlation between the two at all. They're totally separate entities. So, I think
that's why I'm reading my old comics, because there's nothing good out there. There's nothing good out there.
Yeah, I think
video, you have Invincible, you know, which I thought the animation that Eric did was comparable to Invincible, you know, and stuff like that. And there's a market for that, dude. So
yeah,
I would encourage him. I sent him a little message, but you know, I'm just a little guy here. But
you know, he listens though. Eric's great. Eric really does listen, and I think that's really evident in the enthusiasm that you see among the fans, because they keep coming back. You know, and really the only other guy I can really compare Eric to is Brian Pulido, my old boss at Chaos Comics, who has been doing crowdfunds for probably the last 5 or 6 years with Lady Death. And Brian's amazing, because Brian will raise a couple $100,000 in like 20 minutes. You know, I mean, Brian's able to tap into that, you know, his original fan base from the 90s, and he's grown it over the years. And, you know, he knows his audience probably better than anybody. And that's kind of what I see with Eric. I see a guy who really understands his audience, respects them, and just wants to make something really great, and something they can get excited over. And I also think that you know, the scope of who he writes for, you know, it's basically kind of PG-13. You can get young adults. Comics, all the comics are safe for young adults. You know, PG-13, you know, I was watching R-rated movies when I was 9. So, you know, for me, it's not a big deal. But if you're a parent, you're looking for something for your kid, you're a grandparent, you know, you're looking for something for your grandkids, or you're an uncle looking for a nephew or a niece, something cool and new, that is more in the sense of kind of traditional superhero storytelling, sort of traditional mythology. I think that's what people are finding with Isom. And now you've got Chuck with Alpha Core, Mike Barron with his book, Good Ying, I think it's called, and the Yaira or Yaria. I'm not exactly sure how you say that, but I think all this stuff is exciting, it's fun, and it's new and it's fresh, and I think that gets people excited.
And they're world building,
they're world building, exactly. I mean, you're creating something similar to the MCU, only this is something different, and that's just not happening within American comics. It's certainly happening within manga, you know, and we certainly see the sales there. But again, you know, Marvel and DC's not as bad as Marvel, but Marvel's just sort of inability to understand where they're at. And then you look at the sales, you look at what they're creating and you look at the sales and the correlation there, very similar to Disney. Just these people are lost in space. They really have not, I guess they haven't bottomed out yet. And I think that's kind of where we've seen Netflix and Amazon.
They're
I think
going to have to hit the pit, the
yeah,
bottom.
well, and I think that's Paramount. I think that's where you see some of the streaming services doing course corrections. They've obviously kind of hit that rock bottom, or at least what they're comfortable calling rock bottom. I don't think that Disney's hit rock bottom yet, and they're going to have to bottom out. And hopefully, these brands, whether it's Star Wars or Marvel, aren't damaged to the point of no return. You know, they've done a lot of damage to Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Marvel. And,
Oh yeah.
but I will say this: I think it wouldn't take much to turn things around. You know, I think that you can dial into what people want, and that's why I think that they need to bring back the X-Men. You know, they need to bring back their masculine, tough guy heroes, whether it's paying RDJ a lot of money to come back, paying Chris Hemsworth to come back, Chris Evans. You know, we need our masculine, tough male roles to come back and be tough, masculine characters again. Because right now, we've just got a bunch of girls who are all out basically being these faux tough guys. And the girls
and leave out the Butch Queen of Asgard in a suit, for crying out loud.
Dude,
I want to see Olivia Munn as Psylocke. Man.
You know, it's interesting. Emily Blunt said recently that she's so incredibly bored of playing these tough guy roles, and she's right. I think, I think that one of the reasons why Ripley comes off as such a great character is because in Aliens is because she's being maternal. She's protecting Newt. You know, get away from her, you bitch.
Get away from her, you bitch!
That's not the same as Dirty Harry saying, do you feel lucky, punk? And we've taken these women and we put them in these positions in these characters where they're saying, do you feel lucky, punk? And they're not any good at it. They're just not. You know, they're better at being maternal, and the men are better at being stoic and having those quips as they extinguish the bad guy. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. I mean, stuff like that. Girls can't do that stuff. They just don't. They don't do it well. And it looks awkward and it looks forced. And Emily Blunt was saying that if she never plays one of those characters ever again, so be it. And she said that it's not only not something she wants to do because she doesn't get any pleasure out of it, but I think she also said it's boring.
Right. And she was bored with it. Right.
And I would think that it would be, to be honest with you, especially from an artist standpoint, where you have all of this reach within you, right? Like you've got more to give than just playing this tough guy role that should really be a man's role, So
plus, you didn't earn it like Ray. Never earned it. Just never all of a sudden had it. Boom.
I'm such a dumb character, man. I mean, give me. I'll go back and watch, Force Awakens or not Force Awakens, but any of the prequels, Phantom Menace. I'll watch Phantom Menace a dozen times, or forever if I don't have to watch that crap, because it's just so bad, And again,
but yet Carrie Fisher was great in the first movies, and she was a badass running around without a bra on.
I mentioned Marsha Lucas. Marsha Lucas recently came out and called out Kathleen Kennedy, and she said that the people in charge of Star Wars right now, including Kathy Kennedy, don't know shit, and that's a quote. Marsha is a huge creative force behind the original Star Wars. And to have her come out and call out Kathleen Kennedy, and she's like, look, I know Kathy, I've been friends with her for a long time, but she is so out of touch and has no clue what the hell Star Wars is about. And the people that are running it have no idea what it's about, And so when your own friends, people you grew up with, you know, because Marsha's probably roughly the same age as Kathy. When they're calling you out, there's a problem. But this, like I said, this is the intervention that Disney continues to ignore. You know, it's like an addict,
Right.
and you get all of your friends together and say, dude, we love you. You have a problem. We want to help. Disney keeps saying, I don't have a problem, and I'm going to go back to freebasing woke, right? And they storm out of the room, you know? But the box office is the intervention as well. You know, flop after flop.
And the
It
little
can't go
bait and
on forever.
switches. Little bait and switches like the Santa
Yeah,
Clauses.
yeah.
I still watch Disney, and Tim Allen, the season 2 is good.
Yeah.
Hey, man, they got Gabrielle Iglesias in there. Fluffy. That's Kris Kringle.
I would
I
say
mean,
that's a course correction too. They went back to
yeah,
Tim, you know, because they
yeah.
know that middle America and most people, like normies, people who aren't plugged in politically, they love Tim. Everybody loves Tim. He's a
Yeah,
national,
sure.
he's an American national treasure, you know, tool time. So anyway,
And
I mean,
Galaxy
dude, I was watching that guy on the HBO comedy specials way before
I
Tim.
remember those, yeah.
They were great. And
Hey,
we
in
loved it.
conclusion,
Yeah.
I do again. I said this a million times. I appreciate this long. It was
You
just
just
good.
split this into 2 interviews, Tim.
I'm
Split it into
gonna
2.
flip this into about 3 interviews, man.
But
So
I'm
it
gonna have to
doesn't
bolt
turn
soon
into
'cause I gotta go get
Friday
some
night
lunch.
fights, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I got to bolt in about 10 because I got to go eat something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna become hangry.
Yeah, no problem. In conclusion, the post millennial. That's you and
Yeah.
Lisa's channel.
Yep.
Go ahead and plug that, please.
Yeah, we've got a show that we do on the Post Millennial Rumble and YouTube channels called Pop Culture Warriors, and that's how you and I met. And you know, we do 2 things. We either do kind of a rundown of the week's entertainment topics that we like. We review movies. We review TV shows. We give recommendations on shows to check out, artists to support. And then we also do long format interviews. We just did an interview with Kurt Schlichter yesterday, who has a new fiction book out called Overlord in his action adventure series called People's Republic series. And we talked to him about the book and about his influences, and largely kind of just stick to pop culture and entertainment. You know, we had Robert Davi on, which we did a long form interview with, and we do stray into politics every once in a while, but most of the time it is just fun talk about entertainment, stuff that we like. I try not to bitch too much because nobody wants to listen to somebody bitch all the time. You know, we try and use it as you know, a vehicle to turn people on to things that don't suck, and also make the point that not everything sucks. Not everything that comes out of Hollywood sucks. There are some great things coming out. Not everything's perfect, but it never is. So we do Pop Culture Warriors. We'll have a new one coming out, but you can check that out on Rumble or YouTube. Just search for the Post Millennial. And Lisa's has a Substack called Bright, which is a great daily newsletter, politics, pop culture.
Lisa's got a bunch of great books out there too.
She does. She's got great books, which you can all find on Amazon. She's written Social Justice Warrior Handbook, which is a really funny satirical book about the woke and the social justice warrior dorks. And then she's you know, we do the Pop Culture Warriors stuff. You know, it's frequently. So we try and do it at least 2 or 3 times a month. Sometimes paid work gets in the way. But and then I've got you know, the stuff I'm doing with Eric July. Obviously, I've got Alpha Core, Isom, and then there's a book I'm going to be doing for Eric, which he's going to announce pretty soon, which will be coming out in the spring. And then Lisa and I are also producing a children's book, and we're actually on the hunt for an artist. So we're going to be doing something for readers that are ages 6 to 9. And I'm looking for an artist right now, talking to a couple guys, and it's going to be really exciting. So it'll be something that will probably debut late next year once we've got some stuff to show for it. But got a great script, working with Chuck Dixon again, and you know, want to try and, you know, capture the hearts and minds of those young kids, those young boys out there, especially. So this series is actually going to be really geared towards young men and young boys, because there's just so little that's really made for them these days. You know, everything's for the girls, you know, and every time I turn around, it's another girl protagonist. And I just say to myself, that's too bad, because the boys need their protagonists too. They need their heroes, you know, maybe more than ever right now, you know?
And Brett, thank you so much for the interview. Appreciate it. If you
bet.
ever need an old rock drummer with a lot of stories about Gary Lewis and Jerry Lewis, I was in the movie Hardly Working.
Wow.
You know where I am on
Absolutely.
Twitter.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
No, thanks so much,
yeah.
man. It was a lot of fun. So I enjoyed it. We'll do it again for sure.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Brett.
You bet.